I remember when I thought I had life all figured out. Success, to me, was something you earned through grit and sacrifice. Dreams were only worth chasing if you went after them on your own. And relationships? Well, love was supposed to be something you got after you made something of yourself. I wanted to be someone, a man who didn't have to worry about money, who could give his family a life of stability. I was convinced that was the key to happiness. Looking back, I see how much I boxed myself into that belief bubble, convinced that focusing on my career was the right choice. I thought Lily understood. I cared about her deeply, but in my mind, my career had to come first. If I worked hard now, we'd both benefit from it later on. I was certain she knew that. I figured sacrificing time with her, skipping dates, staying late at work, all of that was temporary, something we'd laugh about someday. Lily was everything I could have asked for, supportive, kind, always there to cheer me on. But I worried that staying together might hold us both back. I'd tell myself that once I made it, things would be different, that she'd be proud of me. But every time I hit a goal, another would pop up, and it was like there was always a new reason to stay late or put in just a little more effort. I didn't see that for her, every missed moment was adding up. I thought we had to go after our dreams separately to make it in life. I was so wrapped up in my own ambition that I didn't realize what I was sacrificing along the way. What I didn't know was that, eventually, my belief that I had to do it all alone would come back to haunt me. I'd have to lose the one person I truly cared about to see just how flawed that belief really was. I always had this quiet fear in the back of my mind that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't cut out for the kind of relationship Lily wanted. I didn't like to admit it, but there was a part of me that doubted whether I could ever fully live up to her expectations. What if I ended up letting her down? What if I wasn't enough? Success felt like something I could control. I knew that if I worked hard, put in the hours, and stayed focused, I could make things happen in my career. But love? That felt so much less certain. It scared me, this idea that I could give so much of myself to another person and still risk losing everything. And then there were those nagging insecurities that I couldn't shake off. I wasn't the most confident guy in the world, and sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if Lily would eventually find someone who could give her what I couldn't. Someone who wouldn't second-guess everything or get so wrapped up in work. I kept telling myself these were just fleeting thoughts, nothing to worry about. But in quiet moments, they'd creep in, leaving me with this sinking feeling that I wasn't doing enough for her. Deep down, I think I was more afraid of failing in love than I was of failing at anything else. With work, there were clear measures of success and failure. But with love, there was no roadmap, no safety net. And I knew if I messed things up with Lily, it would hurt in a way no career setback ever could. I'd been so focused on my career for so long, I didn't even notice the first cracks in our relationship. At first, it was just small things, a missed dinner here, a forgotten anniversary there. But eventually, I started seeing it more clearly. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional. And that was harder to ignore. I tried to brush it off at first. I told myself that once I closed this big deal or finished this project, everything would go back to normal. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the reality started to set in. Lily wasn't as happy as she used to be. She wasn't as present. She seemed distracted, her smile not as bright, her laugh not as carefree. I asked her about it a few times, but she just brushed me off with a smile or say everything was fine. But I could feel the tension in the air, that weight of unspoken words hanging between us. And every time I tried to dive into the problem, she'd pull away a little more. It was like she was slipping through my fingers. And no matter how hard I tried to hold on, I couldn't stop it. I remember one evening, sitting at the dinner table, trying to talk about everything and nothing at the same time. I was running out of excuses, but I couldn't admit what I was really afraid of, that I had let her down. That I hadn't been enough for her in the ways that truly mattered. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made, time, energy, focus, and told myself it would pay off in the end. But here she was, pulling away, and I couldn't understand why. Was it something I'd done? Was I too focused on my own success to see her needs? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I might have been doing everything right for me. But I wasn't doing anything right for us. The moment I realized things were slipping out of my control, it hit me like a punch to the gut. Lily wasn't just growing distant, she was starting to look at me with eyes that seemed more like a stranger's than the woman I'd married. It wasn't the same, and I wasn't sure how to fix it. All I could do was try harder, work longer, and hope that, somehow, she'd start seeing me again the way she once had. But hope wasn't enough. One evening, after another silent dinner, she said the words I'd been dreading, the words I'd been too afraid to even think about. "I think we need to talk." That's when I knew. I could feel it, deep in my chest, the panic starting to rise. "I think we're growing apart, Mike. I don't feel like you're really here anymore. I miss the us we used to have, the connection, the closeness. You're always focused on work, and I get it, I do. But I'm not sure I can keep doing this." It was like the floor dropped out beneath me. My mind raced. How had we gotten here? We'd been happy once, right? I could see it now, those little moments I'd dismissed as nothing, the signs that she wasn't getting what she needed from me. But I couldn't let myself accept it. I wanted to fight, to convince her that things could get better, that I could change. But the words kept echoing in my head. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this." I tried to respond, but all that came out was a jumbled mess of apologies and promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Lily was right. I'd been so consumed with my own ambition that I didn't see how badly I was hurting her. I'd thought I was doing everything right, that my sacrifices would pay off, but I had neglected the one thing that mattered most, her. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything. My heart was heavy, and my mind was racing. I had pushed her away, and now I wasn't sure if I could pull her back. I spent days lost in my own thoughts, replaying that conversation over and over. Part of me wanted to fix it. I told myself that if I just gave her more attention, worked less, did something to show her how much I cared, maybe we could make it work. But there was another part of me that knew the truth. We weren't just a couple of months into this problem. We'd been drifting apart for a long time, and the foundation we built wasn't as solid as I'd thought. I kept asking myself, do I stay and fight for this? Or do I let go? The thought of losing Lily was terrifying. I'd always imagined that our relationship would last forever, that our love would withstand anything. But now, standing on the edge of that decision, I wasn't sure if I could fix what I'd broken. Was it too late for us? Was I too far gone in my pursuit of success to even try to rebuild what we had? I had spent years building my career, sacrificing moments with her, telling myself it was for our future. But now that future seemed so uncertain, and the thing I had valued most, my ambition, felt so hollow without her beside me. I started to think back on the good times, the moments when I'd look at Lily and know she was the one. I remembered our late-night talks, our shared dreams for the future. But then the doubts crept in again. Would she ever trust me again? Would I be able to show her that I still loved her, that I could change and be the partner she needed me to be? I knew that if I stayed, it wouldn't be easy. It would take work, real, consistent work. But could I truly give her that? After everything I'd neglected? Or would I only end up breaking both of us in the process? In the end, I made the hardest decision of my life. I had to let go. Not because I didn't love her, but because I needed to face the reality that I wasn't the man I promised her I'd be. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. If I stayed, I might only keep hurting her. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I knew it was the right one. The first few days after the breakup felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything felt off, like I was living in someone else's life, not my own. I kept telling myself I had made the right decision, that letting go was the only way to move forward, but it didn't make the pain go away. I felt lost, unsure of who I was without Lily by my side. I realized I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to my brother, Sam, the one person I knew I could count on. He wasn't one to sugarcoat things, and that's exactly what I needed. When I told him what had happened, he didn't say much at first. But after a long pause, he looked at me and said, "Mike, you're doing the right thing. You've always been there for others, but now it's time to take care of yourself. Don't rush to fix everything. You've got to take the time to heal." His words were simple, but they hit me hard. I hadn't really thought about healing. I'd been so focused on doing things, fixing things, that I hadn't given myself the space to breathe. It was okay to feel hurt. It was okay to not have all the answers. I also spoke to a close friend from college, someone who had always been good at seeing the bigger picture. He told me something I'll never forget. "Mike, this isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter. You've got to let yourself feel the loss, but don't let it define who you are. This is your chance to rediscover yourself, your own goals, and what really matters." Hearing these things from people who cared about me helped me see that I wasn't weak for feeling lost. I wasn't a failure because my relationship didn't work out. I was just someone who had given everything to something I believed in and now had to find a way to rebuild. It wasn't easy, but every time I had a conversation like that, a little weight was lifted off my shoulders. Slowly, I started to piece together who I was again, without the pressure, without the fear of letting someone down. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was myself again. It wasn't a smooth or quick process, but slowly, I started to feel like myself again. The weight of the breakup was still there, heavy and lingering, but with each passing day, it became a little more manageable. I realized that the pain wasn't something I could just will away. It had to run its course. I had to sit with it, let it teach me what it needed to, and then, when the time was right, let it go. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rediscovering the things I used to love. I picked up an old hobby I had let slide, painting. It was something I hadn't done since I was a kid, but it felt like it had always been waiting for me, just under the surface, waiting to remind me who I was before everything got complicated. I also started hitting the gym more regularly, not to get in shape for anyone else, but for myself. I needed to feel strong again, physically and emotionally. The mirror no longer showed the man who was weighed down by guilt and self-doubt. It reflected a man who was putting the pieces of his life back together, one rep, one brushstroke, one day at a time. I also spent more time with my friends, something I hadn't done in years. It was easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of work and relationships and forget about the people who had always been there for me. They reminded me of my worth, of my ability to bring something to the world beyond just my career. But the biggest change came when I started to let go of the guilt. I had been so focused on the idea that I had failed Lily, that I had failed us, that I hadn't allowed myself to see that sometimes letting go is the most loving thing you can do. It was in that moment, when I finally allowed myself to feel proud of the man I was becoming, that the healing really began. It wasn't a perfect process. There were days when the loneliness crept in, when I felt like I was taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But there was also something else now. Hope. Hope that I could heal, that I could be better, and that, one day, love would find me again. A few months after everything fell apart with Lily, I found myself in a place I hadn't expected, open to the idea of love again. The thought of dating or getting close to someone else had once seemed impossible. How could I open myself up to someone after all the heartache, the uncertainty, the self-doubt? But something had shifted inside me. I realized that my past didn't define me, and it didn't mean I couldn't experience happiness again. One evening, a friend invited me to a small gathering at a local cafe. I didn't want to go, to be honest. The thought of mingling with strangers and putting myself back out there felt daunting. But something told me I needed to take the step, to move forward in a way that felt right for me. That's when I met Grace. She wasn't what I'd expected. She wasn't flashy or overly confident. But there was something about her, something warm and genuine in the way she smiled, in the way she listened when I spoke. We talked for hours that night, and as the evening wore on, I realized I hadn't felt that kind of connection in years. She wasn't like Lily, and she wasn't trying to be. She was just herself, and I found that refreshing. We didn't jump into anything quickly. In fact, I was hesitant to even start a new relationship. But Grace was patient, kind, and understanding. She didn't rush me, and she didn't try to push me into anything. We started out slow, just spending time together, getting to know each other. And over time, I realized that I was starting to trust her, not just with my heart, but with my vulnerabilities, my insecurities, and my past. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that love wasn't something I had to chase. It wasn't something I had to fix. It was something that, when the time was right, would come to me, genuine, pure, and real. And Grace, in her own way, helped me see that again. It was a slow rebuild, one that required patience and understanding, but every day I spent with her reminded me that it was worth the effort. I wasn't repeating the past. I was creating something new, something built on trust and honesty, not on expectations or fears. With Grace, everything felt different. It wasn't just the way we laughed together or the way she would catch me off guard with her kindness. It was something deeper. I had finally let go of the past enough to recognize that love, when it's real, doesn't come with the weight of old mistakes. It comes with freedom, with understanding, and with a sense of peace. I had spent so many years believing that love meant sacrifice, that I had to give up pieces of myself for the sake of someone else. But with Grace, I realized something else. Love was about balance. It was about being able to give and take, about two people supporting each other without losing who they were individually. It was something I hadn't known I needed until I found it in her. I used to think I needed to have it all figured out before I could truly be happy. I needed to have the career, the house, the perfect life before love could even be a possibility. But with Grace, I learned that happiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. And when you find someone who truly understands you, who sees you for who you are, you realize that the world is full of possibilities. I started dreaming again, not just about work or success, but about a future with her. We talked about plans, about where we wanted to live, about what kind of life we could build together. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of making mistakes or facing challenges. With Grace, I felt like I could take on anything, and I realized, looking back on everything, that the journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. The pain of losing Lily had led me to a place where I could be the man I always wanted to be, not for someone else, but for myself. And that's what made the difference. The more I allowed myself to heal, to learn from my mistakes, the more I understood that love isn't about perfection. It's about accepting each other's flaws and growing together. It's about finding someone who complements you, not completes you. In Grace, I found someone who not only accepted me but challenged me to be better, to keep growing, to keep evolving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living the life I was always meant to lead. With love, with purpose, and with a sense of belonging that I hadn't known was possible. Looking back on everything, I realized how much I had changed. The man I was when I first met Lily, when I thought I needed to hold on to everything tightly, was a far cry from the man I had become. I had spent so many years believing that love was about control, about keeping people close because I feared losing them. But what I learned through all the pain, all the heartache, was that true love isn't about ownership. It's about freedom. It's about letting go in order to truly see someone for who they are, and allowing them to do the same for you. I'm not the same man I was when I ended things with Lily. I've grown, I've healed, and I've learned to love myself first, which has made me capable of truly loving someone else. When I met Grace, it wasn't about replacing Lily. It wasn't about fixing a broken heart. It was about finding someone who could walk beside me, who could share my journey, and who believed in the same kind of love I had spent so many years looking for. And here's the thing, life doesn't always go the way you plan it. Sometimes you have to lose something precious in order to understand what truly matters. I used to think that love meant everything had to stay the same, that if you just tried hard enough, you could make it work. But now I know that love is about trust, it's about growth, and it's about timing. If I hadn't gone through that painful experience with Lily, I never would have been able to see how much stronger I could be. I never would have discovered the kind of love that can heal, that doesn't carry the weight of expectations, but instead, is based on mutual respect and understanding. I look at my life now, at the love I share with Grace, and I know that everything has led me to this moment. Every challenge, every heartbreak, has made me who I am today. I'm not perfect, but I'm enough. And that's all I could ever ask for. Love didn't come easily, and it didn't come when I expected it. But when I was finally open to it, when I was ready to let go of the past and embrace who I was becoming, that's when I found it. And that's when I realized that sometimes, the most beautiful things come after the hardest battles.